Hey, shuckalaka kapow. How's it going, old schoolers? You're kicking it old school, Russell J.S. And I am your host, Russell J.S. I am doing a review on a CD, a tribute CD. I mean, during the early to mid 1990s, a lot of older bands, you see, they were paying homage to a lot of these good bands with tribute CDs that were compilations of the artist's songs performed by various artists. I mean, I can remember the first one I heard of was Kiss My Ass, which was the Kiss tribute CD, which I had done a review on. And I rated them, which song sounds better, the one done by the artist or the original artist. And like it was a good way for younger people like me. You see, I was a teenager in the 1990s. And it was a good way because a lot of us were turning to like the older bands. We were all fans of Nirvana and Metallica and Guns N' Roses and Pearl Jam and Pantera and Alice in Chains and Nirvana. But we wanted to find out. Yeah, I'm wearing an AC/DC t-shirt, and this isn't the first time where I did a video where I was, doing a video on a certain artist where I wore the wrong shirt. If you remember, I think it was something to do with Van Halen, and I wore an Iron Maiden t-shirt. But hey, this is what I'm wearing to go out in. I paid $40 for this shirt on eBay. Let me go ahead and show it off to you. It says Hell's Bells at the bottom. It shows Angus strutting, and you got it on the back there too. But I hope you like that shirt. I found it on eBay, along with a Star Wars stained glass themed, silk button down as well. And I have a Creature from the Black Lagoon one too. And I hope to find more shirts like this as some of my favorite bands. I mean, I got some that were 20-something years old. One of Kiss, which is the Love Gun album, and a Led Zeppelin one, which is a picture collage. But enough of that. Let's get back to the subject at hand. This is one particular band that helped forge heavy metal. One of those bands, I mean, right up there with, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Deep Purple, Iron Butterfly, Led Zeppelin. But the one band out of all of them that really defined the terminology heavy metal was Black Sabbath, consisting of Ozzy Osbourne on the lead vocals and harmonica, Tony Iommi on lead guitar, Geezer Butler on bass, and Bill Ward on the drums. And this quartet of musicians, they combined blues and jazz and fusion with a down tuning, just because of an accident that guitarist Tony Iommi had, where he was working in a metal factory, where he slammed a big iron door on his fingers and cut off the tips, and he would forever change the sound of hard rock guitar as we know it by forging heavy metal. Now, this tribute CD, it's called Nativity in Black, a tribute to Black Sabbath, where various artists of the time decided to go ahead and put their spin on Sabbath songs. Now remember, if you're new to the channel, hit a like, subscribe, leave comments in the box down below, ring that bell for notifications for future videos, and tell all your friends, your colleagues, your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your grandma, your grandpa, your pets, all your friends, your roommates, everybody everybody and anybody that, like you, likes to kick it old school. Like you, like me, they love to kick it old school. And without further ado, let's check out this bad Oscar, shall we? Let's see how we can compare the originals to the covers. Now, starting off, track number 1, After Forever, performed by Biohazard. I have to say, Biohazard did a really stellar job on this song. And, I don't know, I think I like both versions, the original and the cover. So you know what? I gotta give them both a point. Children of the Grave, performed by White Zombie. I love White Zombie and everything. And I love I love Rob Zombie's post White Zombie solo stuff that's been going on since the late 1990s. But I have to go ahead. I didn't care much for this cover, and I love White Zombie, so I have to give it to the originals. Paranoid, performed by Megadeth. Oh, I love the original version of Paranoid. Who doesn't? Who does not know that song? But the way Megadeth portrayed it, you know what? In more ways than one, the original is the best, but I love the way Megadeth performed it and made it their own. So I'm giving them both a point. Supernaut, performed by, before I get into this band's name, don't nobody get offended, because literally this is the name of this band, and they came up with this name long before the whole, what do you call it, became, oh, if you say this or that, you're being offensive, you're being a bigot, you're being prejudiced and everything. But they perform their version of Supernaut, and the band is called, you're gonna, I don't know if you're gonna laugh or feel offended, but this is actually the band's real name. Now, bear in mind, before anything, became offensive about the subject, this was the 1990s, so everything and anything went. Supernaut, performed by 1,000 homo DJs. Oh boy. Now, please, all honestly, just know that this was a different time. So if you are offended, I mean no harm. And if you don't believe me, look up this CD and you'll see the proof. I mean, it's right there in the back, everything. So, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't, I may disagree with some, forms of politics and everything like that, but you know what? I am a firm believer in we can all agree to disagree. All right? I mean, but let me just say this. Supernaut done by 1,000 homo DJs. They, they did a really good job. And for that, I'm giving, because I love the original song too, I'm giving both the original and the cover a point. Iron Man, performed by Ozzy with a band called Therapy. Now, this version of Iron Man is killer, I have to say. And you know what? The original is killer. And again, points for both. You have to check this version out. It's, Iron Man performed by Ozzy with Therapy. As a matter of fact, Ozzy actually does a cover of NIB, because there was another Black Sabbath tribute CD called Nativity in Black 2. Haven't heard that one yet. I didn't know until a few years ago that they came out with that, so I'm gonna have to look for that one. But Ozzy actually does a cover of that song with Primus, and it is really killer. Lord of the World by Corrosion of Conformity. You know what? I have to go ahead and give it to the original. Corrosion of Conformity is a great band, but no. I'm gonna stay original. Symptom of the Universe, performed by Sepultura. That goes to both originals and covers. Sepultura, they did a really awesome killer job on Symptom of the Universe, so I do got to give them their props for it. The Wizard, performed by Burning Brummies, or Broomies, whatever that is. Yeah, I listened to that, and I love the original version of The Wizard way better. Now, here's a twist. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, performed by Bruce Dickinson with the band Godspeed. Now, I love the original Sabbath version of that tune. I mean, that's one of Sabbath's finest tunes of the original lineup. And you know what? Bruce Dickinson and this band Godspeed, they did a really killer job on it. So I'm giving point to both. NIB, performed by Ugly Kid Joe. It was very enjoyable, and you know what? Again, I love the song NIB, and sadly, I don't know whatever became of the band Ugly Kid Joe. I know singer Whitfield Crane went on to do some other stuff over the years. So I'm going to give them both the covers and the originals, the cover and original, a point. War Pigs Live, performed by Faith No More. Faith No More is a good band. They did a decent job on it, but originals. Now, last but not least, Black Sabbath, performed by Typo Negative. Yeah, I was listening to it, and I'm sorry, it cannot compare to the original Black Sabbath written version. So only the originals gets a point there. So now here we got the end result of originals versus covers. We have originals with 12 points, covers with 7 points. So you know what that means. The originals take the points, take the win. Now, yes, this was a video that I was getting ready to put together. As you can see, I'm getting other stuff ready as well. Like, I've got Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell to go up against Led Zeppelin Presence. And I've also got, let's see here. What else did I not do yet? Sammy Hagar versus Van Halen. Yeah, I got it written as Van Halen 3. How about this? I know some of you people, some of you Van Halen, fellow Van Halen purists, are saying, God, you're so hurtful to that album. You must not really like that album. Well, let's just say I'm going to go ahead and go back to listening to it again. When it first came out in 1998, I'm glad that was $16 to $19 and change I was able to keep in my pocket. As a matter of fact, I think with that money, whatever the cost of the CD was at the time, I think it was either Blue Oyster Cult Heaven Forbid or either Kiss Psycho Circus, Blue Oyster Cult Heaven Forbid, or something else. And I'm glad I spent my money on that instead of wasting it. I mean, it only sold like, I think 300,000 copies. And I remember going to a record store like a year or so later, and I found it in a bargain bin for like, probably $5. I still didn't purchase it. I didn't purchase it until about a year or so ago, just to give it a chance. And I have to say there are maybe one or two songs on that are decent, and the rest is like, Sherry Garone of Extreme, Gary Sharon of Extreme, yeah, not to anger you Extreme fans. I'm sorry, he was not a perfect good fit for Van Halen. As far as I'm concerned, if Van Halen was still under contract at that time, where they still had to record some music, I would have loved to see it where maybe Eddie, Michael, and Alex went as a trio. If they couldn't get along with David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar at the time, they should have gone as a trio. And everybody would have bought it because it's Van Halen. After Jim Morrison passed away in 1971, the Doors, the surviving members of the Doors, John Densmore, Robbie Krieger, and Ray Manzarek, they went ahead and they did a couple albums together. They did, of the Doors, they did Other Voices, and they did, I think, Full Circle. And then they made a compilation called Weird Scenes from the Gold Mine, and they toured with it and everything. But I guess, they couldn't cut it anymore because, well, times were changing. That whole hippie thing was dying out, and they're looking for the next thing, and they probably had to change music, and they didn't want to do that. So they disbanded and went their own way. And Van Halen, they could have continued on and on and on. If they couldn't at the time get along with, or they thought they couldn't get along with either David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar, they could have they could have done like what Frank Zappa did for years up until his death, when when the government decided to put parental advisory stickers on certain albums because they were trying to ban certain music. I mean, Frank Zappa from 1985 till his untimely death at the age of 53 in 1993, all albums that he ever put out were just instrumentals like Shut Up and Play Your Guitar, and they still, even though it was instrumentals, this is how clueless some government authorities are. They still slapped the parental advisory sticker on his albums that he would release until he died, even though it's all instrumental. And Van Halen could have gotten away with doing I would have loved to hear a Van Halen album that, was all instrumental. It'd be, that could have been Van Halen 3 instead of what I like to call it, Van Phalen 3, or maybe Van Failure, But that's the way it is. It is what it is. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and soon I'm gonna put these two together, and I'm getting ready. I'm also gonna put Kiss Hot. I'm also gonna write down, get ready to do Kiss Hotter Than Hell versus Van Halen 2. And I mean the real part of the real Van Halen, not Van Phalen. I love having fun with that. Can't you tell? Just don't beat me up too much in the comics section. Okay, comments section. I'm being comical. Anyway, that's what I'm getting ready for, and more videos are to come. It's like I've said before, sometimes I have to postpone things that I love so I could take care of things important. That's what being a grown-up is. That's what I consider what most people make an excuse of, quote unquote, adulting. All right, I'm truly adulting in my life. Like I said, I take care of my mom and dad. They're older, and my father has had already 2 cancer scares and a couple heart attacks, and he survived, and thank the Lord for that. And my mother has been having problems. She already had 2 knee surgeries, and I got to take care of them, make sure they're okay. But, I still do what I got to do to find time to make videos. I love making the videos, and I do feel blessed, despite I've only had this channel up, 10 years, and I only have 184 subscribers. I still feel blessed about it. I really honestly do. This is what you call a working class vlogger, guy that, he's taking a chance, but he's still taking care of his priorities first before he goes into the things he loves. But at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and close out the video. And remember, keep it real, keep it fresh, keep it chill, keep listening to old school music, keep playing old school video games, keep watching old school movies and old school TV shows. Get you enough of love, get you enough of peace, get you enough of tranquility, get you enough of less drama, no drama, less chaos, no chaos. And as always, get you enough of all that you love. And as always, I wish you all Godspeed. May the force be with you always. And shuckalaka kapow!